Hello from Victoria. Welcome to this evening's programme.
First tonight, the prolific teenage thief finally behind bars after the judge who'd given him a last chance of freedom said it was time he took responsibility for his actions.
19-year-old Bradley Wernham was spared jail last year despite admitting almost 700 offences in Essex and Hertfordshire.
Today, the same judge sentenced him to 5 years in prison after another attempted burglary. Lorna Ramsey reports.
It was during an attempted burglary in this street in Witham when Bradley Wernham's luck ran out. He's the 19-year-old serial burglar who was given a second chance. But today he was sentenced to 5 years behind bars after he was caught going back to his old tricks again.
The original community order was always backed up with if he failed to stick with the order, he would face a very stiff custodial sentence, and I'm delighted that that has been delivered today.
Last year, Wernham admitted almost 700 offences over 5 years. During his crime wave, he stole a Mercedes worth £85,000, an Audi RS4 valued at £50,000, a Porsche Cayman costing the same, and a £30,000 Land Rover Discovery. He even raided a Presbyterian church. Judge Christopher Ball gave Wernham a 3-year community order, and he was moved from Harlow to a flat here in Chelmsford as part of a new rehabilitation scheme to try and stop his criminal lifestyle. But today, Judge Ball told Wernham, "You see yourself as a victim and you are not. The public are the victims of your offending and you are responsible and no one else. Until you are a man enough to appreciate that fact, there's little hope in you changing your conduct."
I found it extraordinary that he was given community service and that he was moved from where he resided in Harlow to a secret address with his partner in Chelmsford. It just seemed to me cocking a snook at the justice system.
Back in January, Wernham had just visited this probation office in Witham when he targeted a house round the corner in Avenue Road. One neighbour I spoke to didn't want to appear on camera, but he told me he heard Wernham smash a window and that's when he called the police. But it seems that the police were already watching his actions because plainclothes police officers arrested him as he tried to escape. Barry Marsden is another neighbour and knows how distressing a burglary can be.
The trauma that you go through on the day is really disorientating, but it goes on for a long time afterwards too. Yeah, the effect is long-term.
The judge described Wernham as a prolific burglar, saying no shed, house, school or factory was safe. He was given a second chance to change his ways, but with that gone, he now faces a long stretch at Her Majesty's pleasure. Lorna Ramsey, Anglia News.
So, why is it then that the courts seem to vary in the punishments they dish out for what appears to be the same sort of crime?
Our correspondent Matthew Hudson has been looking in detail at how the justice system deals with burglars.
Burglary is one of the commonest serious offences and one criminals often commit many times. In 2008, nearly 40% of people convicted of burglary had 15 or more previous convictions, while just 4% were first-time offenders. And punishments vary enormously. You can get up to 14 years, but that practically never happens. If you are jailed, the average sentence is around 2 years at a cost of £38,000 a year. But nearly half of convicted burglars are given community sentences. Others are fined, an average of less than £200. And don't expect the new government to want harsher sentences from our courts. The Lord Chancellor, Kenneth Clarke, doesn't believe prison necessarily works.
Too often, prison has proved a costly and ineffectual approach that fails to turn criminals into law-abiding citizens.
Anyone convicted of burglary 3 times should be sent to prison for at least 3 years. But judges currently find reasons for not doing that in nearly 1 in 5 cases. Lawyers say courts have to take mitigation into account.
It's always a balancing exercise. Each case will be different, but I can understand that people would want to see such crimes punished and punished harshly, but at the same time, in the longer term, there has been this trend towards community sentence which may offer some rehabilitation in the longer term.
Crimes of burglary are usually linked to drug or alcohol misuse or social deprivation, but study after study shows what victims and the general public wants is less understanding and more punishment.
Matt Hudson there. Now, a jury has been hearing how a businessman from Norwich killed his former girlfriend and her new partner in a jealous rage.
They heard recordings of the desperate phone calls the victims made to the police as they were being stabbed to death.
45-year-old John Moody admits killing them but claims diminished responsibility because he can't recall what happened. Malcolm Robertson reports now from Norwich Crown Court.
They were golfing partners, but today a jury was told how John Moody killed his pal Kenneth Snell because he was jealous of the relationship that had developed between Mr Snell and Moody's former girlfriend Karen Brown. In October last year, both she and Mr Snell were stabbed to death in a frenzied attack just outside Norwich, killed in a jealous rage by John Moody. He and Karen had been in a relationship for 12 years, but according to the prosecution, he'd carried out a series of violent attacks, and she ended the relationship 2 years ago, although continued to work in the catering business they ran in Norwich. Prosecuting counsel Graham Parkin said John Moody had been driven by rage and revenge. He'd admitted the killings, but his claim of diminished responsibility wasn't accepted by the prosecution, who insist it was a premeditated attack. On the fateful night, John Moody was at Norwich Beer Festival. At 8 o'clock, he was told by a friend that Karen Brown was in a relationship with another man. At 8:15, he went into a club in Norwich to ask for a telephone directory. At 8:35, he arrived at his home in Kerrison Road and armed himself with a knife and hammer. He then drove to Ken Snell's bungalow in Cringleford and killed him and Karen Brown. At 9 o'clock, Karen Brown made a desperate call to the police. A recording of that call was played to the jury, who were warned that it would be very harrowing. She said she was at Brettingham Avenue and there was an intruder. She was screaming. All of a sudden she said, "It's John Moody." The operator kept saying, "Hello, where are you?" In the background you could hear Moody keep saying, "Karen, why did you lie to me?" He kept asking, "Why did you lie to me?" The screams then gave way to groans, and then there was silence. The only voice you could hear was that of the operator, who was desperately trying to get a response, but there was none. Mr Snell telephoned the police at 9:05. "I've been attacked by a man. It's John Moody. He's in the garden beating her up." "What injuries have you got?" "I've got head injuries. God knows what she's got." "They're coming into the house. He's got a hammer." A series of thudding noises could then be heard. John Moody left the dock while the recordings were played. The jury heard that after the killings he met a girlfriend in the car park of a Norwich office, and after visiting a beach together they went to a local hotel where he was arrested the next morning. He's denied murdering 39-year-old Karen Brown and 65-year-old Ken Snell. The trial resumes tomorrow. Malcolm Robertson, Anglia News, Norwich Crown Court.
Right, it's 6:09. You're watching Anglia Tonight. Next tonight, his injuries are shocking.